Look at that, beautiful, man. Like, I know you're one of the first people that's done it outside. That's just a beautiful backdrop behind you, mate.
Well, I've just been asleep, and then I saw the skies change completely. And I was like, I can't waste this because this may be the only summer we may see. So I thought I'm gonna come outside for a bit.
Yeah,
And,
summer's nearly here, isn't it? Is it? It starts this weekend,
gone.
isn't it? It's gone, yeah.
Gone, hasn't it? Like we had that bit in April and May, and then it's just been horrible since.
It's like, honestly, the weather that you've got there, Chris, it's
nothing like it.
It's just raining here. It's just terrible.
Well, that's what I thought as well. Since you guys are kind of in the north, I thought you don't know what's happening here.
Rub it in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I thought I'd show you what you could be.
Yeah, we don't actually know what the sun is in the north. Never seen it.
Looking really pale.
Yeah, so how have you been keeping, Chris, man? It's been so long. I should have been in touch with too long.
Well, no, you've been a lot more busy than I have. I mean, Christ, you became a paramedic. I mean, I remember you disappeared off for it, but became a paramedic, and you've had a child now, haven't you? So
yeah,
that's a good enough reason for anyone to go a bit quiet for a couple of years.
Yeah, mad time.
And when was it you left? It would have been 2013, 2012?
Yeah, around that time, probably 7-8 years ago now. Yeah,
yeah,
I reckon
easily.
So yeah, easy. So in that time, man, you're saying I've been busy, but I've been following you on your journey, and that's what we're about to get into now, which is going to be really interesting. But first, what I'd like to just quickly cover, because obviously it's the elephant in the room, and Lee knows this, and we've been talking to a lot of guests about this, is the COVID lockdown and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's sort of, it doesn't mix, does it? So what's your thoughts?
Actually, no, this is quite an odd one. In obviously running the gym and everything and trying to figure out a way we can come back safely. I've been trying to ponder, like, what kind of attitude and culture you'd need to have for a BJJ to kind of operate. And is it any different to what we have anyway? Like BJJ culture, as far as I know it, and maybe, I don't know if it's solely my gym, but it seems to be wherever you go anyway. If you are leaky in any way, you don't come to the mats. Like if your face or another orifice is leaking, you don't come. If you have anything red or blotchy, you don't come. If you have anything that looks slightly weird, you don't come. And so how is that any different? It almost seems like this whole pandemic is the world realizing what it's like to do BJJ. As in, the second that anything horrible happens, you don't go outside and you don't go to what you usually do as in BJJ. You isolate until it's gone, and then you carry on. I mean, we've all heard people with ringworms, staph, or if they have like a nasty flu or like something appearing out the front or back end that shouldn't. Anything. Those people don't come to the mats, or they shouldn't come to the mats, and they get shamed if they do come to the mats. So how is that any different to what we do already? Like, this whole idea of how you should act with coronavirus. Obviously, I know it's the time it takes to show symptoms is a bit different, but trying to figure out how you'd operate a BJJ club afterwards, it's like you're pretty much saying the exact same thing you've always said. You make sure you come with exceptionally clean kit, you come freshly showered, you wash your hands should you disappear off for any reason, no shoes on the mat, the mats get disinfected after every session. And how's it any different?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't think it's the actual, because me and Lee have sort of come to a conclusion that this virus, we know it's bad for a certain amount of people within society, but for young, healthy individuals, is it that bad? Like, really? So we're sort of working on the conclusion now that it's not. However, what has been put in place is the social distancing rule and the legislation that government have put in place. So that seems to be the hold up for jiu-jitsu, because other gyms can come back and like weightlifting gyms and yoga, you know, that them sort of things can implement social distancing. However, jiu-jitsu, you just cannot do it. It's impossible.
No.
So
No.
I sent you the elite athletes thing earlier this week, and I was like, because I've been the gym that me and Lee go to, the owner there, Dwayne's been sort of saying, what do you think of this to try and get us back rolling? And I'm looking at it, and he's from my perspective, from a healthcare professional perspective, I'm like, this isn't the legislation that you need. You need the social distancing to be dropped, and then we can go back. Then we can go back. So, what sort of time frame do you think you'll be getting Fighting Fit back? You know, got any sort of?
Oh, again, like, you know, pretty much since this thing started, every time I see whatever the majority of people are doing, so the other businesses, etc., or it's always, you know, I say you try and mitigate more than anything else. So you know, you can't solve everything. So the idea of doing some like heat tests when people come in, try to isolate bubbles. So like how we were told to isolate houses. The idea that I had was, and it seems to be the case, because I took up climbing about 18 months ago, and it seems like they came out with the exact same stuff when they did their studies, like of how they'd operate walls, etc. Is create almost households within the gym of like small numbers of people, and just like how they've talked about with local lockdowns, etc. As in, if towns or counties get ill, they go into a specific lockdown, or countries, for example, do the exact same. So have higher belts, like purples, brown belts, running classes with small student bases on a set night. So you almost like you book those nights, and you don't intermingle the different groups. Everything get, you know, you could almost have, like, you know, if you say if you have a 3-hour section of a night, you could have like almost like 2 different groups in, and clean the gym in between the 2. Like, don't let people go into changing rooms. Make sure they get just on the side of the mat, so you're limiting how much gym they're actually using. Whole area gets cleaned, all doorknobs, etc., and then the next group can come in. But if one group gets ill, like someone in that group gets ill, that whole the rest of the group then get isolated for like 14 days. They lose their mat privileges for 14 days, because then you're not wiping out the gym, you're wiping out small sections. So it's almost like just doing what the government are recommending on a national level, just creating it to a microcosm inside the gym. I think that would be because then you could, like I say, you lift lockdown restrictions as time goes on. You can then maybe intermingle 2 different groups, and then, you know, you start to then bring the different countries back together again. And that seemed like the most logical way in my head of actually doing it. And as much as people want to try and get the gyms back, doesn't seem to be what they're doing. They're just doing, like, you know, these small bubble trainings in corners of the room. But again, when you start to throw bodily fluids around the room, it doesn't matter anymore. And so it's kind of like I almost went over and above of how I'd want to run jiu-jitsu. And it just seems to be where we're going now. It's like there's no point to what we're doing, as in it doesn't take into consideration the nuances of what martial arts are like, or grappling is like. You are in each other's faces, and then you just can only go back to, like I say, BJJ culture. If you leak or if you're red, don't show up.
Yeah, which I know Lee agrees with, because we're desperate to get, and I bet you are absolutely desperate to get back rolling and training.
Yeah. You have no idea.
Yeah.
I feel like myself, like there's only a certain amount of things we can do to mitigate any kind of crazy, like, exploding. You know, you've got there's got to come a certain point in the middle of all of this, and I've said this to you, Joe, many times recently, where we just get the fuck on with it, because it's just, you know, like, to a certain degree, I know that that's not going to pass legally or anything like that, but there's going to come a point where the government loosen off the strings just enough for us to be like, okay, Now we're grown-ups, we're going to use our common sense. And the common sense is exactly what you said at the start, Chris. If you're feeling ill, don't come to the gym. Right? It's just that goes without saying at the very start. Anyway, you've got a sniffly nose. Don't go and put yourself in front of someone's face. And I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for us because we all just want to train. We're training like 3 or 4 times a week, and then it just stops. It's never happened before. The choice has been taken away from you, and you've got to sit on your hands and not do anything. So like now, I don't know. I don't know if we're just making excuses to try and get back, but for me, looking at the numbers, looking at what's happened with the virus, learning about viruses because I've got nothing else to do, you start to think to yourself, well, should we just, it's got to come a point where we just get on with it. I don't know. What do you think, Joe? I just...
Yeah, the reason I wanted to speak to Chris was because of, I feel like the time is going to come sooner or later where we need to reopen gyms. And I just wanted, because obviously Chris is the head coach at Fighting Fit in Stafford and Stone. And his journey to becoming the head coach is an unusual one in many respects because, and obviously, Chris, you can tell the story better than I can, but am I right to think you turned up at the gym and then most of the coaches at that particular gym then left and you were the sort of the person left in charge?
Yeah, so the way I came in, and it's quite odd, is I'm a BJJ black belt and Preet Mickelson, and I've never done BJJ, which seems to be like a cheat then, in that how have I been awarded this? Like the hardest belt in martial arts, I did it by never doing the art. So I came through, I did traditional Japanese Jiu-Jitsu when I was like a teenager up until my very early 20s. Got a black belt in that, found Fighting Fit and heard of these legends of these hard asses in Stone. Turned up and it wasn't BJJ, it was submission wrestling. This would be March 2009. And there was no massive structure behind it, as in they had some YouTube stuff they'd seen, like some very, very early videos they'd seen, or some like VHS and early UFCs. But it was pretty much just like the idea of like warehouse fighting, as in this is a double leg, this is a single leg, this is closed guard, half guard, and butterfly. There's no Dela Heave or anything like that. If one person stood up, everyone stood up, and you wrestled again. You had a dart, a guillotine, a triangle, an armbar, and a heel hook and a neck crank. And that was it. There was no gi, there was no further techniques than that. There was no chaining of techniques. And so me coming in with a black belt from a different martial art kind of almost put me ahead. And I'd actually had some formal martial arts training. And due to the growth of information that was appearing, like, YouTube was starting to take off at this point. You had some decent books coming out. I think Eddie Bravo just released his, and Jiu-Jitsu University had been out for a couple of years at this point by Galvao. No, it wasn't Galvao. It was Sala Hiberos. That was it. Jiu-Jitsu University. Galvao was something else. So I was just basically just reading these books, then bringing the techniques and then trying them out in the gym on guys who were rolling, and it was stuff like they'd never seen before. So when my coaches left after the first year, one had to leave due to work, another one had to leave due to injury, and they said, look, can you just look after the gym till we come back? Now it's 10 years ago. I don't think they're coming back. I'm still waiting on that one. And so that just kind of, and that's, I think Joe joined probably about a year after that happened. So the gym was very small. There's like 5 of us. We couldn't exactly say we did BJJ, so it was very hard to get numbers in because you can't really advertise something you don't do. And all we did was no-gi, and there was like no real idea of what the hell we were doing. We just like did a few techniques and then just rolled most of the time quite violently, and competed a lot, which was the only way we could figure out if stuff worked on a bigger scale. Then around about 2013, end of 2012, Christian Graugart released his book, BJJ Globetrotters. And that's when he did his round the world trip and visited all these gyms and wrote this book afterwards. I ended up reading it in the space of a couple of days and then being amazed at this idea that jiu-jitsu was like so much bigger than I'd ever thought it could be. I'd already been to like places like Braulio's gym because that's only been in Birmingham, which is about 35 miles away. But it never felt like I could train there easily. A, due to distance, B, due to price, and C, like I was told, like you can't train here unless you have Braulio's gi, and it was, you know, the usual Baja attitudes you sometimes find. I was like, oh, okay, well that, you know, if I'm only going to be able to train here for once every couple of months, I'm going to have to buy all this kit. It doesn't really make sense. I have a little white gi. Why can't I use this? And so, yeah, I read Christian's book and went to a seminar of his in Bolton, April 2013. And we ended up catching a train back together. Carl Fisher dropped us off at the train station in Bolton. We caught a train back together to Manchester. And we had this chat, and he said this idea of this group of independent gyms all training together. Like, none of this, you can't train here because it's Checkmate or Baja or anything like that. It's like, we're just adults, let's just go train. I said, yeah, we'll sign us up if we make it. Like, it'd be perfect. We'd love to jump in. A couple of weeks later, he emailed everyone and said, look, I'm starting it. If you want to be part of the affiliation, this is like the code of conduct. You can, anyone who comes to your gym can train for free, and any of your members can go to any other gym they want. You can't stop them. And that's something that we were kind of already doing anyway. Is that the only way we were picking up any techniques is if I was traveling like every couple of months to a different gym, I'd maybe get a technique or a sweep or something, or someone else would go away for work and they come back and they go, oh, I learned this at this gym in such and such. And so I was like, well, we do this already. I find it odd that other gyms don't let you do this. Soon after that, you know, there's enough gyms that Christian said, like, look, there's a few of us. Why don't we get together at my gym in Copenhagen and train for a few days? And that was the first camp. And then there was like the first camp, so like there was 40 or 50 people. There was, you know, it's not lots of numbers. The only coaches were the ones from the gym itself. And I was just white belt learning all these amazing techniques for the first time. Again, I'd never actually done really BJJ. I'd never really, you know, been a member of a BJJ gym. I was just a no-gi guy who wore a gi. Ended up having some really good roles with lots of the guys there. And he turned to me and said, Chris, why isn't your coach giving you a blue belt? I was like, there isn't one. I don't do BJJ. So he threw one at me. And so he promoted me then up to purple and brown. Purple in 2014, brown in 2017. And that's why I met Preet at the Copenhagen camps. Copenhagen camp 2017. I met Preet. And he was I saw him on the instructor list, and I was obviously going as a punter. And at this point, I was kind of already rolling or competing at kind of black belt level at like the Manchester Open. I think I was in the same division. I think Cam Matakuru was supposed to turn up, but he didn't show that day. And Flex from Sheffield, he was in the same division. So I was in like an open weight black belt division as a purple belt, 80 kilos. I think Flex is like 100, 120 easily. Black belt. I was like, so I was entering stupid shit. And then I'm thinking about why not. And then, saw Preet on this instructor list. I thought, I've never seen this guy before. It said you're from Estonia. And I thought, who's ever heard of Estonia? I'll smoke this guy when I'm there. So eventually get me.
Hold on a second. So you were competing against Preet the first time you met him. Have I got that? That's not right.
No. As in, like, so he was an instructor at the camp, and I thought, I'm already competing at black belt and already doing really well. Who's heard of Estonia? I bet he's rubbish. Who's heard of Estonian Jiu-Jitsu? And so I thought, I'll roll this guy. No one's heard of him, and I'm sure I'll do really well. And he smashed me. He bullied me like I'd never been bullied in my life. He literally knelt above me in side control. Like, he didn't even get side control, just knelt above me at my side and held my elbows with his hands, and I couldn't move. I was like, this is strange. Like, literally, I was like lying there like this on my back. He had like one hand on each elbow, and I just couldn't move. And every time I try and do anything, he'd just submit me at will. Like, that's it, it's over. Like stuff you do to like a day one white belt. And there was no pressure on me. His chest wasn't on me. It wasn't wrapped around my head. It was just touching my elbows. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. And then, I was doing the usual kind of like T-Rex framing on the floor. And then I said to him afterwards, what the hell? And he said, you leave your elbows out. I was like, No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Where do you want me to put them?
Yeah, where else can I hide them? And so a couple of months afterwards, I went to the Heidelberg camp, and he did a class there, and he did side control defense actually. And that's when I realized that my understanding of anatomy was incredibly poor. And that's your elbow, but that's your armpit. So I was hiding my armpit, but I wasn't hiding my elbow. And he said about touching your elbow to your hip. I was like, yeah, I don't hide my elbow. Oh, I can see that now. And so I literally turned up to him afterwards and said, look, how much to get you to the UK? Because I want my guys to learn this. And at this point, he hadn't taken off in the way he has now, this kind of European Danaher. I mean, he was already doing some decent seminars, but he was still part of SVG, etc. So he started coming to my gym every couple of months. We started to get more and more people in. Like the seminars were hitting 70, 80 people from around the world. Like we had people flying in from California, across Europe, and just so strange. Like, this is anyone who've ever met him would like, I need to go see this seminar. So it was started to come across quite regularly. And then in March 2019, he left a black belt on the mat and said, that belongs to you. I was like, oh, thank you. It's a very Estonian way.
No way.
But he threw all my jiu-jitsu out the window. Like, not to say I had much in the first place.
That's I remember sitting at Lee's house, because I follow you on social media and kept what the gym's going on, and I always knew you as this killer from the Midlands, and basically I'd watched you compete and watched you win quite a lot of competitions and stuff. And I remember rolling with you and not standing a chance against you, and like doing like the memory I have is we're doing a 24-hour roll, come and do a 24-hour roll or a 12-hour roll. And I was like,
it was the 8-hour. That was literally just after I got back from the first Copenhagen camp. So you met me, or you left just as I got my blue belt. So that would have been, you would have left December, January.
Yeah.
2013/2014.
So it was a long roll, and I was like, right, I've paired off with the coach straight away. That's it's fine. Let's go this. And within like 20 seconds, you'd submitted me, and I was just like, oh fuck, this is gonna be such this is gonna be
every Christmas, because it was December. Those pictures come up on my phone saying this happened X number of years ago, and it still makes me laugh because I've got you there and just like the yellow t-shirt just dripping with sweat, just like looking like what the hell's happening. And it was like Max and various other people.
It was absolute like a slaying every week in and week out. And so in my head, because the things that happened in my chain of events is you started going to the Globe Trotters camp, and one of them was Keenan Cornelius was there, because I remember Morgan sharing something about Wormguard, how he didn't want you to film him doing Wormguard, but yet you could film yourself doing what he was teaching,
that was September 2014.
So and then I saw you in a blue belt competition at one of the camps,
same camp,
and just destroying everyone. And I was like, how did you get on, Chris? And I remember you saying, you're like, submitted. So in my mind, I was like, Chris is really, really efficient at jiu-jitsu and he's starting to like know his shit. And then years later, you put a post up saying something like, my jiu-jitsu's all wrong. I've met this guy, and I was like, I was going to Lee. I was like, how can his jiu-jitsu be wrong? How can jiu-jitsu be wrong? Like, and I was like, I thought it was it was wrong.
It was wrong in a big way. I know, so the way Preet Kav deconstructed it is that he has this whole overarching idea of defense. I haven't come across a coach yet that hasn't mentioned it in some way, but their emphasis on it is on the wrong parts. And the best way I can describe it is, so I had a video out. It was from the Estonian camp last year called "How to Defend Everything." And it's basically just a meta explanation of Preet's ideas. Unfortunately, it got more views than any of his stuff on Globetrotters, and like, considering it was his ideas, and then started to get me like trips around the world. I was like, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
But so the overarching idea, and I remember Ryan Hall seminar back from 2011 when he came to the ADCCs in the UK, like talking about the same thing, was, the every control position in jiu-jitsu requires you to inhabit the space between someone's knees and armpits. That's anything side control, close guard, even half guard to an extent, back control, mount. You're always in that space. And so the first line of defense is always, the main defense to all of these things is always get them out of that space. You don't need to know anything else. And like, there's a video, you can type in the, BJJ guard pass into YouTube, and you'll find this in every single video. And the best one always makes me laugh is there's a Renzo Gracie one where he's like showing a closed guard pass. And, he's talking about how to grip the gi and, where to grab it and all these different things. And he's putting so much emphasis on this and like where to put your elbow to push on the knee. But it doesn't just mention the fact that you're just getting them out of that space. Just get them out of the space between your knee and your armpit. And all Preet says, like, like jiu-jitsu is chaos for the most part. And you're never going to get the technique perfect. And that's the problem, is you'll spend so long then like thinking this Renzo Gracie guard pass in your head. You'll try and get the gi in the perfect way and everything, but you're completely ignoring the crux of what he's not said. Just get them out of the space. Like a guard pass, by definition, is someone is in the space between your knees and armpits, get them out, and then climb into the space between their knees and armpits. That's literally it.
This is sort of going along the lines, because I have watched your YouTube videos, which is titled "A Complete Lack of Technique."
Yeah.
And this is so this is basically saying that you don't need the intricacies of the technique. What you need is the defense. You need to understand the defense of jiu-jitsu, and that'll allow you to then progress in any way. But that's the foundation. Basically, the foundation now is defense rather than attack. Is that right?
Yeah. So, again, you put it in a really interesting way. And again, because I couldn't get any attacks to work on him. Like, he'd let me get on top, he'd let me get anything I wanted, and nothing would work. And I was like, I couldn't understand it. And it's something that stuck in my head ever since, was this idea that everyone thinks they've got good attacks till they meet someone who's got good defense. And jiu-jitsu has always been a case of just attack. Everything's in a very offensive way. Like, everything has to be an offensive way. Everything has to have a technique. Like, anything you do has to have a proactive answer. Like, if your coach says something like, do this technique, and then you say, well, what if this happens? It's always like another technique that has to come on the end of it. And so we're never shown this idea of what is an actual defense to this. It's like the best. Preet describes it. Always describes everything along the lines of boxing. The first thing you learn in boxing is to keep your hands up, and that is always your main line of defense. If you don't want to get punched in the face, just keep your hands up. In wrestling, the first thing you learn is to take a wrestling stance. Bent over with your elbows tight. Why? It's because you don't want anyone to come near your knees or your armpits or the back of your head. So you don't let them in those places. You don't stand upright with your arms up. You don't box with your chin up and your arms down. But jiu-jitsu, we don't have that. We don't have this base defensive posture. And so all the jiu-jitsu still applies, except all we're doing is taking it from the same way that wrestling does it and boxing does it, as in, is there a defensive posture like boxing and like wrestling that you could always come back to in jiu-jitsu? Yeah. And so if you then learn your jiu-jitsu like jabs and crosses from this place, no matter what happens, like no matter, again, in boxing, it's not a question of knowledge, it's a question of timing. If you get punched in the face, it's probably because you threw your jab at the wrong time. It's not that you didn't know how to not get punched in the face. You know how to not get punched in the face. You put your hands back at your chin. You just then learn how to throw your jab and get it back before you get punched in the face. It's the same with wrestling. How do you reach out and tap someone's knee, tap someone's head without exposing the back of your legs and your armpits for too much time? And if you then get shot on or someone pummels you, think, right, well, I don't do it at that point then. But we don't do that in jiu-jitsu. We just have technique answer to technique questions. So predicament solutions. He does X, I do Y. Instead of, right, I can do a technique, but I should always know how to get back to this defensive posture. I should always have this answer in my head. that if I mess up, can I revert back to this? And that's Preet's system, as in there is a defensive posture. And so all we did was just we rewired our jiu-jitsu to look like a sport instead of a martial art of he does X, I do Y, which is a martial art way. That's, you know, very much Aikido, Kung Fu, karate, and self-defense arts. That's all they ever do. Like, you know, he throws a jab of 2 punches, you do a block, and you do a throw. Where then he might do a choke, and you do this particular technique, or you might do an arm lock, and you do this technique. Instead of boxing, which doesn't have that or wrestling that don't have that until much later on. You have these are your defensive postures, work your timing.
Yeah.
So it's just jiu-jitsu. Yeah, it's, like I say, you know, jiu-jitsu you made my jiu-jitsu very, very wrong, but still kept it applicable. And this is why I did, like, you know, teaching defense first and having this big emphasis on defense. Is that how many times you see, like, you know, a guy who may be able to throw a punch, maybe able to throw a wicked punch. Everyone can throw a punch, but hit thin air against guys who can, like, bob and weave.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
exactly. And so that's all we it's all that jiu-jitsu became for us, as in, how do we bob and weave with jiu-jitsu? How do we cover ourselves and move around?
How did sorry to stop you, Chris?
Yeah.
There's 2 things coming here. How did Prit see this? You know, how did it come into his you know, his Estonian crazy matrix of a brain?
He's a scientist. He just watched fights. He just watched all these high level guys, and then realized what they were doing, and like look for consistencies amongst them all. And that's what makes it funny, is that everything he ever does, he references like where he saw it first. Like his grilled chicken guard system is completely based on him watching Garval versus Braulio at the ADCC 2013, because Garval just couldn't pass Braulio's guard. But then you saw, like, you know, so you look at Running Man isn't new. You know, it's actually in Jiu-Jitsu University. You know, the Ibero brothers have been doing it for decades. Marcelo, again, he's always got his elbows tied in every time he moves anywhere, and he always inhabits that space. That's why his north-south is so amazing. Braulio, the reason why Garval couldn't pass Braulio's guard is because his knees and his armpits are always there. You even watch a video of Yoga for BJJ fella. He does like it's like a funny video of a guy trying to pass his guard, and he's just, because he's got his knees on his ears practically, of his legs straight. The guy's like just rolling them around like, I can't pass this. So even Ryan Hall, like I said, 2011, said that, you know, the jiu-jitsu is defined by attack, you know, going into between someone's knees and armpits. Well, then isn't it makes sense that if you don't let anyone in between your knees and armpits, that's the defense to everything. That is your keeping your hands up. That is what wrestlers do.
Yeah. So how have you found your guys? Because obviously now you've implemented this into your gym.
Yeah.
And they've before obviously all this madness went on with the pandemic.
Yeah.
How have you found your guys performing in competitions? Because I know Fighting Fit's quite a competition.
Yeah. It got to the point, like, I was competing on like Grapple Vest, which is the big card by Chris Thompson. And he has, like, you know, people like Craig Jones on it, Lachlan Giles, Ross Nichols, Mateus Denise. It's a massive, you know, card that he's managed to pull off. And I've been on, I think, 3 or 4 of them now. But then so my guys, like one of my purple belts has been on it, one of my blue belts has been on it, and they've both won. And you think, for us to go, you know, guys who've been in the gym for like less than 2 years, to go from obscurity to appearing on cards alongside the people like Craig Jones is like bonkers. And so there's a black belt who I met in 2017 as well. 2017? Maybe 2018. Charles Harriet, 2018. He's from Florida. He's like just traveling the world, and he's got this amazing life. He came to my gym and rolled with all my students, and pretty much everyone from blue belt and above, he couldn't submit, and he was like, "This is so strange." He said that every belt attacks like you'd expect them to, like every white belt attacks like a white belt, every blue belt attacks like a blue belt. But defense-wise, it says black belt across the board. Like they just close the gaps constantly, and that's pretty much all it is. That Preet just saw what every black belt does, Every black belt does. I haven't met a black belt yet that does not do this in some fashion. They just don't know they're doing it half the time. They just keep their elbows tight, and they keep you from, they don't let you behind the knee, and they don't let you in their armpits. That's no different to wrestling. And they don't let you behind their head. It's very hard to get a guard around these people because they just don't let you in those spaces. All Preets did is he saw what all these different black belts are doing and went, right, that's jiu-jitsu. Can I teach this to a beginner? So instead of, again, this is like the inherent problem of jiu-jitsu is that Preet based his guard game on watching Braulio. We're not far from Braulio's. We have had students from Braulio's come to our gym and say, what is this madness? And that's hilarious, is because like we got it third hand from a ex-Soviet country watching it via the equivalent of VHS. Yeah, you're from Braulio's gym. It's because Braulio's going to teach his guys like Braulio learned, not what Braulio does. And that's the kind of the same with jiu-jitsu across the board. Like the first guard you learn is what? Close guard and half guard. You don't learn, or maybe if you're on a weird class, it's whatever it is that night, like Delahiva or something. Instead of, like, you go to a boxing gym, what's the first thing you learn? Keep your hands up. Then you throw a jab and then come back to keeping your hands up. Not here's a mad combo and do whatever you want with your hands afterwards because you get hit in the face.
So, sorry, just to stop you again, Chris. So, sorry, Lee, I'll let you interject in a second. So when you come into your teaching now, because you're going back to teaching your gym fighting fit, what are the class structures like then? How do you go about that? I mean, is it 90% difference?
Everything's backwards. So, so the first thing that anyone ever learns when they come in the gym is I pretty much take them to the side and I say, look, if you can attach that thing to that thing, your knee to your hip, you're fine. And so I've got, again, I'm competing at a decent enough level. I've got white belts who've been in the gym for like 2 or 3 months, so I can't submit. Like the second they get they close up. It's like theoretically, I could survive Floyd Mayweather. I'm going to hurt afterwards. I'm not going to feel great, but he ain't going to kill me as long as I keep my hands up. If I move an inch, he's going to kill me because I'm going to drop my hands. He's going to see that tiny, tiny speck of a hole and he's going to smash my face in. But if I don't move and I keep my hands up, I'll be fine. And that's the exact same with white belts when they first join. If they can hold the posture perfectly, there's no reason they should get killed. And then they just survive. And then they're like, oh, wow. And then they get a bit more brave and they edge out. They might not get caught. They might get caught. But then they go, oh, okay, well, if I move out that way, I'm going to get caught. So they don't. And so just from there on in, they then develop their own understanding of jiu-jitsu just organically. They don't need you to see it. And then it renders the teaching of stuff like side control, mount, north-south obsolete, because the difference between those three positions is what you stick in the other person's armpits. In side control, it's a hand and a knee. In mount, it's 2 knees. And in north-south, it's 2 arms. And all you're ever doing is changing the combination of what you're putting in their armpits. So if you can take your arm out and put your knee there, well, you've got mount now. If you can't, you have to put your other arm there. You've now got north-south. And so all I ever do then is that when I'm teaching like a technique, we'll do it from the end. So you teach the Kimura itself, show the nuances of the Kimura, then you work back a step, and now you have it from just like a wrist grip, and then you let them move around and stuff, and then you go back another step, and then you get it from, they've just done their guard pass to a control position. They're inhabiting the armpits, and so the person on the bottom becomes more like a pad man. They're moving around and showing the gaps for the other person to get, instead of just dead drilling 10 reps or something. And I'm more interested in not the idea of someone doing 10 reps, arbitrary number for arbitrary time. I'd rather you do 1 rep and just completely examine it, and then go back each step with different levels of resistance and finding that technique with different controls. Like, you have to inhabit the armpit. I don't care how you get there. Just get the armpit and then get that position. And the other person's going to be, hiding the armpit, exposing the armpit, exactly what a pad man in boxing would do. And what the end product should be. So every technique then becomes backwards, and then everyone constantly gets to drill the same thing, as in you're covering your armpits, you're covering the defense every single time. And so it then builds in a natural defense to all these techniques anyway.
Yeah, man. Dude, honestly, this is so interesting, man. I've been quiet, but like, it's interesting for me because I'm a white belt, and hearing you talk about this, it's like, uh, I enjoy striking as well. So you keep like using that as an analogy, and it's so
Yeah,
true as well. It's super true. Like you can't. The fundamentals are the key, and it's easy for me as a white belt to watch the ADCC or watch people on YouTube and go on a YouTube rabbit hole, and or even watch Grapple Fest on Flow Grappling and just be
yeah,
completely bewildered and want to turn up to the gym and just get somebody in something insane, you know. But realistically, you know, like you were saying, then just breaking it down to inhabiting the space between the armpits and the hip. You know, the idea is just to get there. Uh, when you break it down to that and trying to keep that in your mind when you go into the gym every time, I think is definitely key, because as if you were going in and striking, you're going to pay for it if you're not keeping your hands up. Unless, you know, obviously
yeah,
you do get people that once you get to a certain point and you can move and you can duck and weave,
yeah,
the hands start to come down. You doesn't necessarily mean you are going to get hit, because you are that skilled in evading, you
mm,
know, slipping and rolling, etc. So it does get to a certain level where you can start to drop the fundamentals that you were taught to let somebody in so
yeah.
you can catch them. It's a fucking incredible game on all spectrums when you start to break it down like that. But trying to keep what you're saying in mind when you're going in and roll, because what you were saying at the start, jiu-jitsu is chaos. As soon as you start with someone,
Yeah.
you can be like, oh, we'll just go 60, 70. It's all right, man. We'll just do a little flow roll. And if you choose the wrong person and they agree to do that, before you know it, you're going 90 and you're trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
survive. You know, I don't know, man. I like how you break that down, man. It's really interesting.
Well, yeah, it's like I say, there's the problem is like when we teach jiu-jitsu the way it is without this idea of defense and built in, it's almost like teaching people to fight like Conor McGregor, like if you chin up and your hands down. But the people are fine like that because they haven't been told to keep their hands up.
Yeah.
Like, I'll fight, you know, with the gaps open. But I can fight with the gaps open, like you said, because I can bob and weave and I know what I'm, you know, letting myself in for. But I can then tailor it depending who I'm fighting. As if I'm fighting like a white belt or a blue belt who I'm not, you know, I don't think they're going to do anything to me. I leave the gaps open. Come, like let's go play. It makes jiu-jitsu a lot of fun. But when it comes to like purple belts and black belts, again, like Floyd versus Connor, he ain't dropping his hands at that point with his chin up, is he? He's not pulling a
No.
Nate Diaz. His hands are up and he's like, I'm going to get hit in the face otherwise. And so the fundamentals come straight back in. But because I understand the fundamentals, I can do this. And so all I'm doing is I'm giving that information that every black belt does to white belts. And that's literally it, as it's something that we don't explain. Like the amount of times you'll get side control on someone and you'll lose side control. Like, how the fuck have I lost that? The reason you've lost it is because you've taken side control as the technique as it's been shown, but not the nuance of it, of you're inhabiting their armpit. And that's when they get their elbow and they're framing on you and you ignore the framing because you've lost the armpit at this point. And then everything kind of falls apart. But if you just think, I just need to control their armpits, your side control lasts forever. And then if you just start to, you know, your knee falls out, but you can put your hand there, you carry on with side control. Or the amount of people who say, oh, how do you get from side control to mount? Like, you know, do you have to do a certain technique to do it? No. Just you expose your armpit and then you put your knee there. But how many times will you then get, like, again, teaching mount is so dumb. Like the first thing you do when you do a mount drill, and you've probably seen it, is you start, you know, you get mount and they're framing like this, they're doing the T-Rex arms, and the first thing you got to do is open up their arms. And so you like, you know, push off the hips and you pummel in, you open up the arms, and then you can go for your arm bar and stuff. It's like, why don't you just inhabit the armpits in the first place? Why don't you, when you go from side control to mount, all you're doing is moving from your arm being in their armpit to your knee being in their armpit. That's literally it. It's like, and then the arms are exposed anyway. All control is based on this idea. I say you can boil a lot of jiu-jitsu down to these very simple ideas, like concepts. And it was Chu Kwong Man who kind of gave me the other part of it when it comes to guard. So you have like, Preet always says that, you know, the main control is armpit space. The more in the armpit you are, it's like what wrestlers do and judoka. The secondary part, which isn't as important, but still quite important, is the behind the knee. And Chu explained this to me. He says, if you glue your heel to your asshole, pretty much every other guard falls apart. And if you can keep your elbow attached to your hip and your heel attached to your ass, there is no guards at all. There's no close guard, there's no half guard, there's no de la riva, there's no anything. And the main defense to any guard is literally just to get those two things back to touching each other. You either touch your elbow to your armpit, elbow to your hip, or you get them from behind your knee. How's that any different to wrestling? The core fundamentals of wrestling are you don't let anyone touch behind your head, don't let anyone touch behind your knees, and you don't let anyone touch in your armpits. And if they do get in that space, what do? If they touch behind your knee, you sprawl out. If they touch behind your head, you pummel it off. And the first thing you learn when you do any stand-up in jiu-jitsu, which is amazing because then you forget it the second you kneel down, is if someone goes in your armpit, you pummel it out again.
Yeah.
That's every guard pass. There's no guard that can exist if you do that.
So I watched the video, the Globetrotters video that went viral, the one that was got like, you know, and you're saying that you basically stole Preet's idea, and then I'm wondering, obviously, like, I think you're an incredible teacher, Chris, but I'm wondering if it's
thank you.
It's the English Preet's accent or something that why he hasn't gone as viral with that, or whether it's the title of the video, or what was the difference between you know,
we had this conversation because we had this conversation the following camp in Heidelberg, and so when Preet does it, like if you please come down, he's coming down to the UK again by the end of the year once this is lifted. When Preet does something, like we asked him to show us open guard. Open guard took 8 hours over a weekend. Okay? Just holding your knees to your armpits and open guard took 8 hours. If you want to learn close guard, 6 hours. If you want to learn side control defense, another 8 hours. And so Preet can deep dive into every facet of something. For what, like, this is so. If you give Preet a problem, he'll deep dive on that problem, and he'll spend hours breaking every foreseeable aspect of that problem apart. But what I'm good at is seeing what he does with one thing and then tying it to something else he does. I'm like, there's actually mentions, I think, on the Fanatics DVD about hand pummeling and stuff. I got it from him from a different position. He does it from Running Man, where this idea that you have this idea of passive and active defense. Like, passive is, again, it's the same in boxing. You either passively cover or you actively, like, you know, parry stuff out of the way. It's the exact same with jiu-jitsu. I either cover by touching my arm, my elbow to my knee, my hip, or I hold what's going to go there of theirs. Like, if I can cover it passively, or I hold onto their hand and I actively hide it. And then if I lose the active, I just go straight back to passive again. And so this whole idea of hand fighting, but then I started doing it from guard, because they can't attack me from their closed guard if I'm holding their hands. And so I'll cover if I'm if I can't control their hands, or I then control their hands. Like, you know, you see how many times you're in the gi, like when do you grab on the gi? They just grab their hands. They can't do anything then. It was, oh, that's amazing. I was like, you showed me it. You just showed me it from a different place. So I'm very good at seeing, like, the meta of things. He's very good at deep diving on stuff. And just because I did, like, the meta breakdowns of what he does is why I think my videos then maybe attracted differently to his. Because, you know, going through 6 hours of closed guard can break someone's mind. Yeah, if you can break down the meta understanding of defense and all of jiu-jitsu in an hour, it's like, it may not have the same deep dive of detail that he has, but it's something that you can just take away instantly. Just do that to that and you'll be okay.
Yeah. So what happened?
Like
Sorry, what happened? You know, because this video went viral, and then you mentioned Charles Harriott before.
Yeah.
What happened to your career, or your? Because I take it are you still working as a fireman now, or what's happened there?
Yeah, I'm still in the fire service. Yeah. Yeah, still hasn't changed. So all that happened with the jiu-jitsu is that it allowed, like, I didn't realize that people would be interested in listening to this stuff. So I started to do the videos that went onto the YouTube channel, and people just started to watch them and were like, look, can I buy some flights to come out to our gym? And so tickets start to arrive, and it was like, cool, can you come out to Florence? Can you come out to Germany? Can you come out to Israel? Can you come out to, I just did literally before lockdown happened, I did a 10-day tour of Charles up the east coast of the US. So we started in Gainesville, Florida, and then went up through Georgia, North Carolina, Maryland, Washington D.C., Connecticut, and New Jersey. And do you remember Big Jim?
Yep. Yeah.
Marine. Yeah, I went to his gym in Jersey City.
No way.
Yeah, exactly. He's a Henzo Gracie brown belt now. I went to his gym over the other side from New York.
Was it daunting going to gyms in the US? Like, because obviously you've now got a broadened perspective of different gyms because you've been to so many, and obviously with all the Globetrotters connections that you've made, was it daunting going to teach it in the US? Like, because obviously, or did they do
they're
things
massive?
Differently? They're big.
Well, they obviously jiu-jitsu's like their leg lock game's way ahead of ours, like massively. Like stuff I saw out there was bonkers. But they obviously they got a decent wrestling pedigree anyway. So it's kind of my a lot of my message kind of landed in that way because it was like, oh yeah, it's just like what I did at school. But yeah, the amount of people who come up to me saying they'd seen the video was like, Jesus, okay. And so it's kind of, I felt welcomed anyway because most people had already seen that video.
It breaks a barrier, doesn't it? I think if somebody sees a video of you, I did a documentary years and years ago for my tattoo studio, and even to this day, somebody will come in and they'll be like, and they feel like they already know you. They'll tell you they've seen it, and then they feel a little bit more at ease, or they're more ready to talk to you, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So we managed to kind of sell most of the seminar on that video alone. So people will come up to me in the classes like, I've always seen your work, it's amazing. And I was like, really? Okay. But yeah, it kind of broke down that barrier automatically because I've almost adopted a lot of Preet's mannerisms and being quite abrasive with how I teach, like, this is wrong kind of aspect. And I think that's one thing that kind of endeared me to him in the beginning was that he was not afraid to call people out and say that shit, that's wrong. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I mean, the amount of people who got upset over that. Until you realise it's his sense of humour. I was like, oh, okay. But it worked for him. And so being able to call out jiu-jitsu and say, look, this is wrong, and then back it up. Like, fine, this won't work. And then they try and like, oh yeah, it doesn't work. And then they listen to you, or they get really uppity and they go, no, it can't be. And it's the same as like that kind of disconnect when you come across someone who's done traditional martial arts, as in they see jiu-jitsu for the first time, something doesn't happen. Like their karate or their taekwondo doesn't work, and it's like it breaks their mind, and they're like, "This can't be," and they just leave. It's the exact same with.
It was the sort of feeling that I got, man, because I understand that principle of like people who do certain martial arts and they come to then roll on a mat and do jiu-jitsu. Yeah. All of a sudden they're nothing, and it's like the real world hits home very, very hard and very bluntly. But that's how I felt when you put my jiu-jitsu's wrong, and I was like, fuck, like shit, like this could be like like what the fuck's going on here? There's something going on in the Midlands, man. I'm going to leave. There's something going on, and I don't know what, but we've got to figure it out. And that's what I felt like, man, and that's what I wanted to talk.
Well, one of the other things that kind of got me places was I'm like discount Preet. Is that Preet blew up? Like he's got like half a dozen DVDs on BJJ Fanatics now. I think he was booked up every weekend this year up until the pandemic hit, which is insane. Like to go from one gym to another every single weekend. Like nothing in Estonia. It's always some far-flung part of the planet. And literally, he rolls out on a Friday afternoon, comes back on a Monday morning, and he's been in wherever the hell, some part of the world.
That's wicked.
And so when he's obviously managed to increase his prices and such, and I'm not as important or famous as he is, so I was just discount Preet. As in, people would see their stuff and go, Preet stuff looks weird, I want to try it on you. I'm like, okay then. It was the case actually before the black belt arrived, is that I'd go to different gyms in the UK and I'd do this stuff, and they might have seen some Preet stuff and they'd be like, this is weird. And I'm like, yeah, Preet taught it to me. I was like, they'd be like, oh, cool. So how much is it to get Preet? I was like, I'm here, I could show you. Yeah, that's cool. How much to get Preet? God's sake. Did
you get like, because obviously it's very defensive. I mean, I presume this happened. Is like you'd show it them and they'd be like, well, can I just try this move on you to see if this stuff works? How often did you get that?
All the time. There's actually, I did it. This is naughty. I was training at Lorenzo Frequa's gym in London, Wave, and I'd gone over for the weekend. I'd gone for a Saturday to go train with him. It's the end of 2018, so I was still a brown belt. And he said, "Oh, why don't you stick around for the open mat tomorrow? It's like a London-wide open mat. Like anyone from London can come in and just train." I was like, "Oh yeah, okay. I'll stay the night and I'll get a train back tomorrow." But I had no extra kit with me, so I rolled up to the gym the following day, and Lorenzo wasn't there. He had to go somewhere with his mom or something. And I said to one of the people in the gym, one of my friends there, I was like, "Can I borrow a gi?" And they like gave me the only thing that fit was like a jacket. So I had like some civilian shorts on, a civilian t-shirt, and this gi jacket. Left my belt off because I'm an asshole. Went onto the mats, and no one on the mats knew who I was. And obviously, due to just wearing a random gi jacket, lone gi jacket, and shorts and t-shirt, they thought I was just some new guy just wandering off the street. So I rolled to a blue belt, and obviously this pre stuff's exceptionally weird.
You troll.
Yeah.
So I let the guy pass my guard. I literally held my legs out completely straight to this blue belt, and he just like threw my legs to the side and jumped into side control. But I just covered the space and like rolled onto my side, and he couldn't do anything for like 5 minutes. And I was like rolling around. He'd like, again, because the reason like gi chokes work, and I say it in one of the videos, is that if someone grabs your collar here, the only reason it works is because they're stopping from spinning with the pull. Like, so that's why they grab the collar here or something, and that's why they can do it. But if you just like, if you get bow and arrowed, you just like follow the gi, like nothing happens to you. So all he was doing was I was like rolling my back towards him. He'd go around my neck and grab my collar. He'd start pulling, and I'd just spin and like look at him like, "What's happened?" And he'd like this like shocked look on his face. And he'd like pull it, and I'd just like spin around in a circle, like, like playing it up. It looks mental. Like I'm not using my hands, and then I'm just spinning to all these different things, and you can't catch me whatsoever. And he says to me, "Have you done anything before?" I was like, "Yeah, we did some grappling at my kung fu club." And like, he was like, "Oh, you got a really cool kung fu club." And then the second round came along. Do you want another roll? I was like, "Yeah, sure." So he started in guard, and I just like smashed his guard apart, then got knee on belly. Dude, I'm a brown belt. And then he was like, "Oh God."
Picking on the wrong person, yeah.
I just smoked him. And the fear on his face. But it was that kind of like, because it's such a weird way of looking at jiu-jitsu. Like I was like, let him get an armbar, and I'd like roll away from it and just like not like hitchhiker. It was like make it so my arm was completely like unarmbarable. And it was like, this is so weird. He'd like get chokes on me and arm bars and side control and mount, and nothing would stick. And I'd be doing things that you wouldn't do in jiu-jitsu. Like my main mount defense is to roll face down.
Well, it sounds like you're giving up your back though. Then, if you,
I love that idea, and everyone always says like, "Don't you give up your back?" I was like, "No, never hasn't happened yet." Like, I'll roll face down to toe, like if someone's got a mount on me. And it's so against what you're supposed to do. Like if someone's got side control, I'll just roll away and show my back again. I give up my back most of the time, but it's very rare that I have my back taken, just from pre-system. And so just doing it to this blue belt, going completely against the grain of what you're supposed to do, like rolling away every single time. He's like, "This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. I can't take his back. I can't do anything to him. I can't choke him." And yeah, so that's pretty much then what it becomes, is that you let people just play on you, and it's like it's like just bobbing or weaving every punch, just like breaks their minds a little bit, and that's when they then become interested. And that's the problem. That's what Preet's initial problem was, is that you can explain all you want in these videos, but people sit and they go, "Yeah, it doesn't work. I'm sure it doesn't work," until you feel it, and then you're like, "Oh my God, jiu-jitsu doesn't work. You've broken this."
Well, I'm thinking that as you're describing it and as you're explaining it, if I didn't know you and haven't followed what you've done and what you're doing, I'd at this point be very, very dubious. I think I'd be like, I don't know if it can be so wrong, but I've got you know, like I've got an inclination and I've got a very good feeling that this is right. And, you know, like this defense method is working. And that's why I'm asking if people, you know, like, what about higher level belts? Are they trying stuff on you? You know, how are you finding competitions from now? What's going on with them? And
well, that's the thing there. So people see this and think it's an answer to all jiu-jitsu. I was like, no, this is what black belts do anyway. All I'm giving it is to white belts. So at a certain level, everyone does this. You can't get a black belt in jiu-jitsu without doing this. Guaranteed. Every black belt does it. And all it then becomes is a game of timing, of finding those gaps. All I'm doing is I'm giving that knowledge to a white belt. And so their attacks might not be there, but they're not getting submitted. They're not getting caught. And I've had like white belts roll with black belts at camps. And Henry became insufferable because of this. Like there'll be black belts along with them and they can't catch him. It like takes them full 5 minutes of going balls to the wall to like catch a white belt. True, Henry couldn't have moved. He couldn't have done anything to him. But imagine them being that white belt, like thinking, I can survive a black belt going nuts on me.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
It becomes this question of timing, as in, I could survive Floyd, theoretically. I can't hit him, I can't move, but I could survive him. Same with any of these white belts. If you just stick to this religiously, you will not get caught. The only problem then is what you do to attack back. I won't be able to hit Floyd. He'll kill me. But it's the exact same. And these white belts could fight a black belt and survive as long as they didn't move. And all they've got to then figure out is their timing of their attacks.
Yeah, that's really interesting, man. Honestly, because I just want to be in a room with you now, and I want to try and take you back, and I want to see exactly what you do to not let that happen. You know, by just evading it and moving away and all that kind of stuff. It sounds attractive. Like Joe was saying then, though, it almost sounds as if like, yeah, all right, okay, yeah, that's not going to work. You know what I mean? It almost sounds impossible, but I don't know. I love it.
It's again, it's one of my favorite things that Preet's ever done is that he'll sit there and he's got a position called panda, where he just literally sits on the floor with his legs out and his arms by his side like this, and he'll let people just walk around, and they'll go to his back. Realize they can't get hooks in, and they'll walk back around the front again. It's like, it's so funny to watch. As if people will walk to your back, realize they can't take it, and then walk back around the front again because they hope that you've changed your mind since it happened. Because again, you think back control. What is back control? It's if someone goes around your neck, be it gi or no gi, the only reason they can finish the choke is because they need to sit, obviously, with the elbow in front of here. If I turn this way towards the arm that's choking me, you're now hitting here, which is spine. There's no choke there. And the only reason you stop me from turning is if you're controlling my armpits. That's why you have to have hooks in, like seatbelt hooks and whatever. If I never let you get those hooks and seatbelts, the second your arm comes around the front of my neck, I just turn to look at it and nothing happens. And that's what you'll find is that you can give up your back all day long, as long as you keep your arms next to your sides. There's no back control. You need to get the back control to get the choke. With no control, there's no choke.
It's an insane concept. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Chris, because there's my other memory of when I was down there with you, would being in the gym, the actual weightlifting gym, and then looking over and seeing you on full incline on the on the treadmill, the hurricane, and just being like, what is this guy doing? He's sprinting on full incline for as long as he can.
Hill sprints.
Literally hill sprints, and then doing pull-ups with. I remember you coming over to me and be like, "You want to improve your pull-ups? You just get the weight on behind and put weights on and start pulling up with weights on." And I'm like, he's slightly insane. Is this guy?
That's actually that's Martin Rooney. Like he's like the Preet of like physical education. So he's got a bunch of books out. First one was Training for Warriors, and it's Ultimate Warrior Workouts, and then I think the third one was Warrior Cardio. But all the guy, he was the S&C coach for like Frank Edgar, Jim Miller, BJ Penn, Brady Ostima, Roger Gracie. And all the people like demonstrating the techniques in his books are those people. It's Frankie, it's Roger, it's Braulio, and Jim Miller, etc. And so he's a guy who knows what he's doing. And so if you watch any of or read any of Martin's stuff, it's bonkers. And he has this system, like I say, called Hurricanes, and it was like it replicated a MMA fight. This idea of insane level cardio, of like being able to sprint like on a 10% incline at like 25 kmh for like 15, 30 seconds, and then go to an explosive movement, then straight back into it, and then have 1 minute rest. So I literally was just copying his workouts out of this book. I went to a seminar of his in Birmingham, 2012, I think it was. And he literally did an hour seminar on push-ups and said how you can improve your bench just with push-ups. And he was doing like, my bench was plateauing at the time, around about 87, 90 kilos. I was about 82 kilos at the time. And he talked about, doing wide, close, split, Spider-Mans, corkscrews, and like all different forms of press-ups. I then within 6 months went from having a 87 kilo bench to 130. Just from doing his push-up system, and that's kind of kept it. I mean, I kind of stopped doing gym workouts probably about 2 years ago. I've just been climbing and cycling since and doing jiu-jitsu. I went back to a gym just for lockdown, and my bench is still hanging around about 110, despite not benching in so long. But yeah, so he said, like, he also has this idea called the sediv set. So where you do single reps at 90% of your 1 rep max. So he said, like, don't just do chin-ups and think your numbers are going to improve. Make it so you're lighter. So do like, add weight to yourself, add 10, 20, 30, 40 kilos and just do single reps. And then when you come back to do chin-ups, you're now doing 10s, 20s, when before you could only do 5. And so I was doing his chin-up, his pull-up, push-up system and his sediv set system. And yeah, that's what took my bench from, like I say, 80 odd kilos up to 130 in about 6 months. And my chin-up, I think I was chinning up 48 kilos around my waist. But then when I wanted to do like actual chin-ups alone, I think I was doing like 50 in 2 minutes or something like that. It was just, they were just flying up and down. And so it was literally just copying his system. And someone who because some of the athletes that used him were all known for their insane cardio. I was like, he's probably a guy to listen to.
Yeah. Have you done much striking then in your martial arts like journey?
I did 5 years of Muay Thai before I started Jiu-Jitsu.
There we go. Yeah.
I did. I was doing Muay Thai. I'd done 5 years of Muay Thai. Then I came across grappling, and the choice was: do I carry on with doing both and doing shit at both because we're only doing 1 session a week, or just throw myself fully into grappling and do more sessions a week?
Yeah.
And grappling won. I do miss striking, but seeing how, especially with CTE and how that's coming along these days, it terrifies me.
Yeah.
I can do grappling forever. My body, the rest of my body will die, but my brain will be fine. But it seems with striking, it seems to be that the amount of people I speak to say they've got headaches most days, they're having mood swings, and I'm like, damn, that scares me. Like, I've had students come to say, "Oh, what do you think about doing white collar MMA?" I'm like, don't. Like, anyone can throw a punch. It takes a lot to dodge it. Same with jiu-jitsu. Anyone can get a choke. It's a lot to dodge it. The last thing you want to do is eat. Even if you've got a head guard on, it doesn't stop acceleration in your head. You're just gonna hurt yourself. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the money's not there either. You know what I mean? If
no.
Thousands and thousands to do it, you might spend some time contemplating if it's worth it. And though it's how much money you are going to get paid doing it, but no, like just sparring, picking the wrong sparring partner, even then.
Yeah, exactly.
Just gradually. I heard something the other week. You can get CT from riding in a car that bangs around or something like that. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's like there was an article about old UFC athletes, and when they like the damage they've caused themselves, like, you know, head injuries and stuff. I think it was like something like Michael Bisping after his knockout from Dan Henderson was like, I could be completely wrong on this, but he was like in the shower or something, and he said, like, you know, after the fight, like, you know, looking forward to the he said to his manager, you know, what's the plan with this Henderson fight? He was like, what the hell do you mean? It's like, yeah, we've got like 2 or 3 months, haven't we? It's like, dude, you've had it. Well, there was another fighter who called up his girlfriend and said, you know, babe, I just got knocked out. And she started laughing at him. And he's like, what the hell? Why are you laughing at me? And she's like, you've already called me 4 times and told me.
Wow. Yeah.
And that scares the life out of me. Like, knowing people who've been on the buses of UFC fights, they say it's like, it's so upsetting afterwards, like seeing these guys who've, like, you know, can't remember the last 5 minutes and stuff. And you think, oh man, how much money is your brain worth?
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing, man. Sorry, that's the thing. You know, you were right what you're saying about Mike Bisping. I've listened to him talk about that a few times, and he's fucking shocking to think that, like, there's people that can't remember till I remember speaking to Luke Turner about it, Joe. You know, getting rocked so hard. He got knocked out in Japan. He went and fought in Japan, did Luke, and he got knocked out by this guy, and he didn't remember anything from when he got knocked out to when he got back in the changing room and he'd settled down. He had his shower, and then he was like, he started coming to. But the scary thing about that is you're completely cognizant. Somebody come up and talk to him and it'd be like, yeah, you know, and he's talking to him. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right. So the brain's working, but how much damage? It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that's when I'm kind of glad I gave up striking when I did. Like, I've always had the temptation of going to MMA, but ever since I met Preet, especially, there's so much more jiu-jitsu for me to learn.
Yeah.
Like, let alone try anything else. Like, I've barely scratched the surface now of what jiu-jitsu can be. Like the nuances of every technique and all these little ways of controlling chaos. I think I could be doing this for the next 50 years and not even come close to understanding it.
Yeah, like, did you hear about Rafael Lovato as well? Did you hear about when he talked not long ago? He came out and he was talking about what had gone wrong with his brain. He had like several brain scans, and it was, you know, this doctor had found this very rare thing on his brain, and he was like, he just won the title in Bellator. I think he beat Gegard Mousasi. And he was like, he was getting different opinions to try and see if he could fight, because obviously he's reached the top there. You know what I mean? Obviously he's an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner, and then he reaches the top of MMA, and you're like, oh fuck, you know, I'm earning really good money, everything's going really good. And then this doctor's like, he apparently he wasn't going to have the brain scan, and then because he was scheduled to have it, then he wasn't going to have it, and then it just randomly ended up being in the situation to have it. And then they found this thing, and now he's like almost retired. I think he's retiring from MMA now.
Yeah.
But he was considering carrying on fighting even with that.
Yeah.
You know,
it's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't fathom it. I'm quite lucky. There's a good friend actually. It's Dave Letherby. He runs the role models competitions, but he's also a judge for like MMA fights. Like if the UFC is in the area of like Cage Warriors or Bellator, he's usually one of the judges on it. And he's told me, like, you know, after seeing all these guys in the cage, he says he couldn't recommend MMA to anyone. Like, he said to me, like, you know, in quiet, like, dude, like, it's terrifying. Like, I can't watch these young guys get hit in the head like that. It's so upsetting. I was like, yeah, man, I can see. Like, I'm glad I don't. You know, like, you know, we've got kids and stuff. I'm like, I can't. I'd rather remember like them growing up. Than getting hit in the head for a sport.
So talking about maintenance and, like, you know, training, you know, for decades to come, what sort of things do you implement within sort of maintenance stuff? Because obviously we've talked to quite a number of sort of fighters and trainers on this podcast, and we like to get different opinions on, you know, how many times a week they train, whether they're going hard a lot or what they're doing stretching, nutrition-wise, and all them sort of things. Could you just quickly sort of run through some of your schedule and what you implement there, Chris?
So what I find quite odd is that I love jiu-jitsu. I couldn't live without jiu-jitsu. It'd kill me. but I don't train. I don't consider it training, as in my fitness comes from cycling and climbing now. I find those things are more beneficial to my jiu-jitsu because I find it's the stretching aspect. So I started doing adult gymnastics, I do yoga. That's what I find with a lot of guys who hit black belt is their training doesn't revolve around their jiu-jitsu. It's something else. It's more general fitness for their body. Like, you know, the amount of black belts I see just do yoga. It was actually quite interesting as well. I've just been listening to the David Goggins Can't Hurt Me book.
What a book.
He's amazing, isn't he? But he talks about at the end, like, you know, he did all this training with not taking his longevity too seriously. And he said that, you know, you couldn't go a day now without stretching. So here's the black belt. Again, I consider him a black belt of peak physical condition. And what does he say? I have to stretch. And I look at all these black belts and what they're doing. They're stretching relentlessly, like, you know, doing club exercises and different yoga exercises. They're all subscribed to Yoga for BJJ. And so I think, right, well, there's a reason all these guys are doing this. And I started climbing it. It's like yoga on a wall.
Yeah.
And so that seems to be where my understanding of longevity is that, yeah, it's don't consider jiu-jitsu your fitness, because if you do that, it'll hurt you. Like, do things that are kinder to your body. You know, get your cardio from cycling, from jogging, get your stretching from yoga, from climbing, and your strength workouts, etc. Otherwise, yeah, I think your jiu-jitsu career will come down quite fast. I think the 20-year-old in me would have seen, yeah, just train jiu-jitsu harder. The 33-year-old in me goes, don't do that. You'll get hurt. Eat well, as you did when you were in your 20s, when you were competing, and stretch and do gentle cardio, and you'll be fine.
Yeah,
there's obviously, like, you know, good advice.
I think there comes a point, doesn't there? Like you were saying there, when you start to get to a certain age where that's undeniable. What you were saying, like, the only way to maintain your body and make it do what you want to do is to listen to that. Is to listen to that. Yeah. If anybody's listening to that, listen to that information that Chris just said. Then you've got to stretch, you've got to eat right, because otherwise your body's just not going to do what you want it to do. And time's running out. It's constantly moving forward, and you're getting older. And you've only got a certain number of years to use this, like, meat vessel that you've got, and use it to its full advantage before it starts giving in and you can't do anything because of fucking Father Time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, I was guilty as any of them in my 20s. You know, I was going hard. I was ignoring injuries. You know, a finger would break in a class and I'd tape it to the next one and carry on rolling. And like, I'm probably still guilty of it. Like, my end of my collarbone dislocated about 8 months ago, and I haven't stopped rolling since. I went for an MRI a couple months ago, and they said, yeah, one of your lumbar discs is herniated, bulging. I was like, cool. I can roll still, can't I? So okay, maybe I'm not as innocent as I think I am, but I'm not as nuts as I was in my 20s. I'm not hitting as hard as I was in my 20s. I'm not considering jiu-jitsu my exercise. I can't, because that'll hurt me. Because if you consider your exercise, you'll go harder than that, you'll get hurt, and your jiu-jitsu career will shorten. That's what most 20-year-olds are guilty of when they're in the prime of competing. Like, do something else. Like, even, like, it makes me laugh. Like, Nick Diaz is a triathlete. Like, you know, the main way he keeps his fitness is cycling, running, and swimming. All these other guys are doing it in different ways, and they're not, you know, MMA and jiu-jitsu, etc. isn't their fitness necessarily. It's something else entirely, and that seems to be what keeps them going.
Because me and Lee was sort of saying, we've been like, you go to a class and you could be sort of like 15, half an hour roll at the end. And obviously you get a fair pump on rolling. You know, you can get, like, you know, you can get, like, sort of, you can, especially if you're going quite heavy. And I was saying to Lee, I think if we go lighter, we could go for longer, and then we could, you know, develop faster. what's your sort of coaching techniques with your guys about rolling and how long for? And
I think you can't tell them, as in they'll find their way. You can't tell a 20-year-old to calm down. You can't do it, like, because they tried on me. Like, when they want to go hard, they'll go.